Good evening, everybody. My name is Sriram. Welcome to the session of Let's Meditate, hosted by the Heartfulness Institute. Today, I want to speak about anger, an emotion which we are all very familiar with, and hope that we didn't have to deal with it as often as we end up doing. It is said that there are two emotions which humans display, which humans exhibit, which are absolutely necessary and part of nature, and that these are nature's forces. One is in Sanskrit, okay, this is called Kama and Krodha. Kama is passion, okay, love, okay, maybe carnal love, right? And this passion, it is obvious as to why it is necessary for nature because procreation is the way that human beings continue to exist. Living beings continue to exist, right? And without passion, there would be no procreation, right? So it is almost a necessary force that takes care that the chain of humanity continues, or for that matter, all living things, right? The other emotion, which is said that it's absolutely necessary, okay, is krodha. Krodha translates to anger. Now, I can understand about passion, okay, being required for the procreation of humanity. But how does anger fit in? Because most of us, when we think about anger, we tend to think, oh my God, why do I get so angry? Right? And if only I can learn how to give up anger, as if it's a bad thing, right? It is something to be erased from our persona. Is it really true? Okay, because that's what it looks like at the surface. But if we are to go a little deeper, is that true? Or does anger fulfill a purpose as well? Right? Now let's consider anger, right? Anger can happen because of multiple things. Typically, we get triggered by something and that leads to anger, right? And this trigger, many times we think it is always outside of us, right? This guy made me angry, my wife made me angry, right? My mom made me angry, and so on and so forth, right? That we always kind of point a finger at somebody and say, like, this is the external cause which made me angry. Now pause to think, right? It is not just external causes, it is also internal causes. We might have our own expectations, okay, of whatever you want to achieve, okay, whatever in terms of success, in terms of ambition, right? And when that doesn't get fulfilled, you can still get angry, right? So internal expectations, ambitions, okay, desires, greed, all of this can also lead to anger, right? Now, I feel that in a given situation, not everybody gets angry, right? There's a person who's, let's say, prone to anger. They give into anger, they break off into anger very quickly, right? And their tone gets stiff, the voice gets harsh, and they raise their voice, right? And words come out of the mouth, like, which are later regretted, right? Now, it doesn't happen to everybody. There are others who have a greater sense of calm, of poise, the ability to pause and step back in the right moment, right? So you can see that in the same situation when one person reacts and the other person does not, it very clearly indicates that it is not really the external situation which causes anger, but it is in some sense like, the lack of inner composure, the lack of poise, the lack of character in some sense, right? The inability to be on top of myself, out of control, we say, right? It quickly got out of control, right? And then it was disaster, right? So not being in control, being unregulated, right? Not being on top of oneself, not being a master of oneself is what really results in anger, right? So this is about why anger happens. And though there might be external or internal triggers, okay, it is my submission here that it is really the lack of development, lack of inner development with composure, with poise, with calmness, with balance, with peace, with centeredness. The lack of these qualities, and it's the lack of development of these qualities that results in an explosion which comes out as anger. So this is one aspect that I wanted to touch on. Right? The other aspect I want to touch on is the question I started with. can anger actually be helpful, right? Because if it's a force of nature, how can anger actually be helpful? How can it help my progress, right? Now, typically, when we think of anger, it is about us being angry at other people, right? Even when we blame, right, we point a finger like that, and we're pointing. Remember that what they say, that one finger is pointing to the other, but three fingers here are pointing to myself, right? And that say like beware of pointing fingers because three fingers are pointing at you, right? So there is a right way of using anger as well, right? Let us say that I fail in an interview, right? And one way to say is that the interview was bad, kuch bahana tha, like, they never wanted to actually hire somebody. Okay, naam ke vaste interview. I mean, you can blame the other person, and perhaps in some cases it might be true as well. I'm not saying like, that these things don't happen, but more often than not, perhaps like, we failed an interview or we failed a test, we failed a presentation, a pitch, a deal, perhaps because we came up short. Have you considered that instead of blaming others, right? In India, it's the typical habit of a mother. I mean, traditionally, I think things are changing. That when a child falls down, the mother goes, rushes, picks the child up, and they used to give a tapat to the ground, and say, "Oh my God, did you hurt my child?" Meaning, and almost like teaching the child that you're not to blame; it's the other person to blame, right? These are the false practices, okay, misleading practices that we have in India, which are very unfortunate, right? That instead of telling the child that you have to walk carefully, otherwise you will fall down, it's almost like we're teaching the child that whenever something goes wrong, blame things outside of you, right? So this is an approach, okay, to always blaming others when things go wrong, right? But if I were to say that when I failed a test, when I didn't win a deal, to say that, Sriram, you just didn't do a good enough job, you didn't prepare, you were not as good as your competition, right? And you got to improve, right? When you are able to look inside when things fail, when things don't meet your expectations, and tell yourself that you're not yet there and you need to improve yourself, and you can actually be angry at yourself. You wasted a lot of time, and this is your 12th standard. I mean, I'm giving this example because my daughter is studying 12th, right? And I see what's happening, right? It's always a struggle between, do I spend my time well or do I take a break? And how many breaks do you take and how long does each break extend? So it's about like, where you put the responsibility for blame, right? When we turn that inwards, that is when anger becomes an extremely potent force, because it acts as the fuel, it acts as the trigger for us to change ourselves and become better. Unless we can be angry at ourselves, change will never happen. And it is said that the purpose of human life is one of evolution. For me to be better man tomorrow than what I am today. For me, a much better man next week, next year than what I am today. Right? Otherwise, right, it just becomes one long flat line. And it's just that external events are changing and my internal response is changing, right? What is growing? How would it be like, if a plant this high never grew and just like, year after year it remained at this height, right? It'd be useless. What's the use of such a life? But when it grows, when it becomes big, it gives shade, no, it gives oxygen, it gives fruits and flowers, meaning then there is purpose to that life. Similarly, here too, we need to grow, not just in terms of external acquisitions, but in terms of internal change. Like the blossoming of a flower brings beauty and fragrance. Here too, I feel that each human being needs to blossom and refine their character to become better and helpful, loving, and more humane, right? This is the process of growth, right? But how to bring about this inner transformation? Really, the way to bring about this inner transformation is really to bring about this inner change, right? Where anger plays a very important part because it acts as the trigger, as the motive force for me to bring about this change, right? And that's really where heartfulness also plugs in, because it's all in the training of the mind. How can you be at poise? How can you be at balance? How can you be at peace in that moment when something goes wrong? Right? It's all comes with meditation. So with that few words, let's get down to the practice of meditation, right? Go ahead, sit comfortably. Close your eyes softly and gently. Gently bring your attention to your feet. Imagine that healing energy is moving up from Mother Earth, slowly entering your legs through your toes and your feet, and gently moving up the body. As it moves up the body through your legs, your torso, flows through your arms, through your face, till the top of the head. Feel every organ in your body relaxing deeply. Your entire body is now fully relaxed. Gently bring your attention to your heart. Make a suggestion, very soft suggestion, that there is a source of divine light in your heart. And that this light, love in your heart, is attracting you from within. All that you need to do is to observe and feel what is happening in your heart. And just remain there, observant. The process, if you should get slowly absorbed within yourself, that is perfectly fine. Just continue to do this till you hear my voice again. If you find that your mind is beginning to wander, gently bring your attention back to your heart. Just remain there, observant of your feelings. Try and retain your attention in your heart space, ignoring any distracting thoughts that might arise. The next few minutes, we'll meditate, with our eyes closed in silence, till you hear my voice again. with your eyes closed. Take a minute to observe how you feel at this time. Even as you slowly and gently open your eyes, try and remain connected with your heart space within yourself. And try to bring this deeper feeling of peace and stillness out with you to the waking consciousness. Thank you for joining today's session of Heartfulness. We spoke about anger today. Typically, in the moment that we lose it, which is when we find an explosion of anger, when we give expression to anger, it is because we're not in control anymore. Our mind is not regulated. Now, what we're doing here in this meditation is during these brief periods of 15, 20 minutes, your mind is typically wandering, right? And we're trying to do a very focused experiment to see that I'm trying to hold it in stillness. I'm trying to increase my levels of awareness so that my mind remains still. And if you remain observant, like we ask you to do, the mind starts drifting away. The observation will help you bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, and so on, right? So that the mind learns to remain still for a period of time. This is the regulatory ability that we build with meditation, right? For our mind to remain still and present where you're supposed to be. Once you develop this, it's almost like resilience, right? It's an ability that you develop. It's an instinctive ability that you develop. And when you develop that ability, this is what makes the difference. I did mention that meditation can help you control your anger, ensure that you don't explode into anger. How? Because you learn to remain observant. And the moment this anger is increasing in yourself, if you remain observant, you're able to put it back into the pot and put the lid on top. And that is nothing but learning to pause. And when we learn to pause in a moment, instead of explosion, when there is a pause, that's exactly how mastery of anger develops, right? And you learn to be on top of anger rather than anger mastering you. So that's the linkage, the connection between meditation and anger. Thank you for joining me on the session today. We hope to see you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a good day.